Hey, is that folk music that you play there? What is that? How do you call that folk music?
I think it was Studs Terkel who asked Big Bill Brunzi, did he consider his blues music to be folk music? And Big Bill says, well, never heard no horses.
Shake shoe bob shooby doo doo booby doo dow.
Bang! Hot dog!
Don't hesitate. It could be your ticket to a new tomorrow.
Aloha and welcome to Horses Sing None of It. We're here with Tom and Nuni Walsh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And James
Heinig.
Heinig. I almost had it. It was right on the tip of my tongue. And they're here to tell us about the Ukulele Hall of Fame Museum.
Yes, we are. Should we start with a little history of the ukulele or of the museum?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the museum first, and then we can talk about the history of the ukulele. The museum is an organization that started we started up in 1996, and we recently were granted federal nonprofit status. Although it's called a museum, we don't have a permanent open to the public building. That's one of our long-term goals. Right now, we're an entity on the World Wide Web with our website, and we do as many places where we can do displays at museums and at fairs and things like that right now. And we also run our own ukulele expo where we also put on displays and performances.
Cool. And that takes place where? It takes annually, right?
Yeah, the Ukulele Expo is an annual event for the last 2 years, and again this year it'll be in New Jersey. It's been in the Women's Club of Upper Montclair is our most recent venue. It's a nice big space where we had last year a few hundred people attended over the 2 days.
Cool.
October 26th.
Oh.
It comes up in October.
Yeah,
Yes, it
yeah,
does.
pretty much every fall, yeah.
And people can find out about that by going to your website,
Right.
which is
www.ukulele.org, and that's UKULELE.org.
and it has magically appeared on this
Wonderful.
wizardry of
Incredible,
pen
incredible.
in the control room.
As for the history of the instrument has its origins in a Portuguese instrument called the briguinha, and we brought along a picture of the briguinha. You can hold this straight. That's the forerunner to the ukulele. That was in the 1800s. People actually from the island of Madeira came to Hawaii and brought over their briguinhas. And in 1879, the first ship arrived with 3 men on it who were all instrument makers and would build instruments. And they began making instruments in Hawaii that were similar to the Portuguese briguinha with the native woods in Hawaii. And it quickly became popular in Hawaii and became known as the ukulele, where the word ukulele, it comes from the Hawaiian for uku, which is flea, and lele, which is jumping. It means jumping flea, literally. And there's a lot of different stories behind exactly where the name came from, but the most common one is probably the way people's fingers moved around on the fretboard, that they gave the appearance of jumping fleas. And actually, Nuni is related to one of the original makers of ukuleles in Hawaii. Manuel Nunes was one of the 3 men who was on the ship in 1879 who first started making the instruments in Hawaii. And so he's also one of the inductees to the Hall of Fame. You can see this is his inductee portrait. And Manuel Nunes is actually Nuni's great-grandfather. Her mother, Nuni's mother, was born in Hawaii, and I don't know, you could tell more about your
Yeah,
family ties.
She grew up in Hawaii, her mother played ukulele very well, and she played ukulele and danced hula, although she danced most of the hulas of the 40s, which were the comic type hulas. And she's very cute dancing them now in her 70s. So the grandmothers of Hawaii, they call them tutus, so they're so cute when they dance the comic hulas, so she enjoys herself doing that. So that was her grandfather, and ukuleles have been passed down through the family. And one of my cousins in Hawaii, Leslie Nunes, has a large collection of Nunes ukuleles, as does the Hall of Fame Museum.
Neat. The family tie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he was among the inductees in the second year of the museum. And in the inaugural inductee of the museum was King David Kalakaua. And he was the king of Hawaii in the late 1800s. And the reason he was inducted first was because without him as a monarch in Hawaii, the ukulele wouldn't have become what it was, because he was a patron of the arts and music, and he became enamored of the instrument and had it played at his luau's and in his court. And so he's the main reason it's become popular.
Now I have a question. Other than the switch from Portuguese woods to Hawaiian woods, is there a significant difference between the?
They're not too significant, except the tunings are different. The original tuning of the Briguinha, well, there's a number of different tunings depending on where exactly you came from in Madeira or in Portugal. But at some point early on in the 1800s, the tuning switched over to a tuning that's more similar to a guitar type tuning, except it has they're generally tuned either G, C, E, A or A, D, F sharp B, but it's what's called a re-entrant tuning, where the one string is the top string, which would normally be your lowest note, is actually tuned an octave higher than you would expect it to be. That's really the only major change that I know.
Structurally similar.
Yeah, structurally they're very similar.
Cool.
We brought along a couple of Nunes instruments, actually. This is a very early Nunes instrument. It's from the 1800s at some point. Some of the ornamentation, particularly even this piece on the bottom, is kind of common to what you see in a lot of the early Portuguese instruments, like the Briguinha picture that we had. It's a little fancier ornamentation, but so he carried over some of the Portuguese traditions.
This is gorgeously crafted. Look at that binding.
Yeah,
and the rosette.
These were in the very early days. They were made in such small numbers, and everything was handmade by these 1 or 2 people. You can look at instruments that were made 20 or 30 years later, when the popularity had increased and the quality of the workmanship declines because they're mass producing them. And Manuel Nunes actually passed on his skills to a few of his sons, but one son in particular, Leonardo Nunes, worked in his factory in Hawaii for a while and then moved to Los Angeles and was one of the first people really on the mainland making instruments or making ukuleles. And this is an instrument made by Leonardo Nunes, probably in the mid-teens sometime. This is a little bit bigger size. This is a tenor size, which is a little bit bigger than the standard soprano size instrument.
He put some pretty nice binding,
Yeah.
different
fancy
types of
woodwork.
binding on it. Yeah, very nice woodwork
Can we
on
see
the
the
early
figure on the
ukuleles.
back too?
Sure.
Oh.
See, we got a little bit of a split in the back too. But
Nicely done, though. Nicely selected.
But we brought along just an assortment of different instruments to sort of show the range of quality and styles of instruments that were made.
One of the apprentices with Nunis was Kamaka. And Kamaka is still making ukuleles in Hawaii in a very good
His
business.
company.
His company is, yes. He died and his two sons are running it and their sons are running it. This is one of his early instruments called the pineapple, and they have the decal. And this is a quite rare instrument. It's called a Style 5 because it has abalone trim. It's one of the fanciest brands, and abalone up the neck, and plus wood inlay. And some of the more rare instruments of pineapple were actually painted to look like a pineapple on the front.
Yeah.
And so Samuel Kamaka was inducted into the Hall of Fame for his excellent craftsmanship and his long-standing marketing of the ukulele.
Yeah, he was actually one of the few manufacturers. The ukulele over the years has gone through, periods of extreme popularity. First, the first wave of popularity started around 1915, and a lot of people center it around, or the beginning with the Pan-Pacific International Exhibition in San Francisco in 1915, where Hawaii built a big pavilion there and sent over musicians, and there were demonstrations of hula and ukulele playing, and it very soon after that, it really caught on the mainland. Hawaiian music became very popular, and then the ukulele craze really started in the late teens and carried over pretty much through the 1920s. Then during other periods, in the 30s and 40s, it really sort of died out, and there were very few people in Hawaii making the instruments still. Kamaka was one of the few companies that sort of survived the low points, and it's still around today. And they were also around when the second wave sort of hit in the 50s, and that centered around Arthur Godfrey and his television show. He came on television in the 1950s. He had a few different shows, and he was just immensely popular and played the ukulele, and suddenly there was another craze, and they were selling like crazy again for probably 10 years or so, and before it slowed down again.
That's the wave that I'm the product of.
And a lot of people feel right now that we're sort of going through a third wave of popularity, because it really slowed down in the 60s, and everybody was playing guitar, and Tiny Tim also probably didn't help matters, although he gave exposure to the ukulele. I don't know how many people actually emulated it and wanted to go out and play like him. So, but over the last 5 or 10 years, it seems like a lot more manufacturers in Hawaii have started up again, and there seems to be just a widely growing popularity. We've noticed it ourselves in the expos that we put on. It started off as a relatively small event and has really grown into something where last year, like I said, we had 250, 300 people, something like that in total. So we're happy about it, and because we all just enjoy playing, and so we're happy to see other people pick it up and get started too.
Cool. Well, you want to play us another tune since you enjoy
Sure.
playing?
Okay.
Mahalo Makani?
Sure.
Ala ne e mapu mai ne nā kamakani lawa he ahe I lawe mai e ku'unu I kino hopu me hana I kupoli e ke hoa o ke ahe lau makani hali hali ala o kuaina e ala ne e moani mai ne naka u anue Mili le hua I lawe mai I ku poli Kamana o ike roa o ke a he lau makani hali hali hala o ku'aina he ala ne e ahi a he mai ne na ka leo hone ana manu I lave mai aloha a au ho'opu me hana I ko leo e ke hoa o ke a he lau makani hali hali hala o ku'aina.
Got the ending.
That
Very
song
good,
was
lovely.
called Ahela Makani. It talks about love being carried on the wind. It was written by Queen Liliuokalani, who was the last monarch of Hawaii before the United States took it over. She followed David Kalakaua. She was his sister. And upon his death, she took over, and it was only for a few years before the United States took over. But she wrote this song when she was 30. And it talks about someone that she loves, but she can't be with him. And so they're in love. The wind carries their love back and forth to each other. Very romantic.
So what about time period was that?
That would be 1880s. No, 1868 when she was 30. She was the queen in the 1880s, but she wrote this when she was 30, so it was
Nice.
1868.
Very nicely sung and played, too.
Oh, thank you. It's a very beautiful song.
That's
She wrote
gorgeous.
lots of wonderful songs. She and her brother, King David Kalakaua, were both prolific songwriters.
So I remember when we first met at the New Jersey Folk Festival, I asked you how you got involved in this.
Well, Nuni's involvement is more, it's more obvious why she got involved because of I think she's had an interest in the ukulele for a long time.
It's been in our house, ever since I was a child. I've heard the music and seen my mother dance hula.
He did it to me.
Yeah.
About, I don't know, it must be
14 years ago.
14 years ago, he gave me an ukulele as a present for my birthday. I think it was mostly as a joke, and I went out and I bought a book and I started learning some chords. I didn't play any kind of instrument at all at the time, and
Except for the accordion.
oh well, yeah, that's true. You're not supposed to say that on television. And I enjoyed it, and so I said, well, I want to get another one. I went out and bought a better one, and then I found myself buying more and more better ones. And now our whole house is overflowing with them. But
So when you got your first ukulele, were you already with Nuni?
no, and actually, but we met through the ukulele because at the very first ukulele expo that the museum put on, and I was involved in the museum at the time, and we organized this first expo, which was in Massachusetts, in Montague, Massachusetts, and Nuni, who was living in Seattle at the time, flew out to come to the expo because her sister lived in New York, and the two of them decided to come up and see what an ukulele expo was all about.
And there he was.
An ukulele love story
It was.
in the flesh.
And then I went back to Seattle because I was finishing my graduate work, and we had an email romance, and then I moved out.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister that we drove up together to the first expo. She's the portrait artist for the museum inductee. She did these portraits.
Oh, lovely work. Beautiful.
So we met these guys.
My first ukulele, I had a counselor when I was 9 years old in camp who played the baritone ukulele and sang the Battle of New Orleans. And I went, I got to learn how to do that. So I asked my parents, and they bought me a ukulele, and I took lessons from the guy, and that was the beginning of my musical career.
We heard a lot of
that's
people
great.
talking about playing ukulele in camp. It sounds like it was wonderful. Did you have a lot of other people playing in your camp?
No,
Or it was just you? Oh, so
Just
the
the
camp
counselor and
ukulele
me.
stories were much earlier than that, like from the 50s probably. We had a woman write a camp ukulele story for our newsletter, and it was just wonderful.
It's incredible how many people you hear whose the ukulele was their first instrument. You know, a lot of very famous musicians, but also just all sorts of people say, you know, they wind up playing whatever, all sorts of different instruments, but they say, you know, the first thing I got an ukulele when I was 6 years old.
Yeah, it's a kid-size instrument.
Right. And
Hard for a kid to play a big guitar, but
right, and the smaller number of strings makes it a little bit easier, and so it's a nice instrument that you can kind of pick up and learn a few chords very quickly and be playing, be actually playing music and not a very long period of time.
got another tune for us?
Sure.
Oh, we're running out of time
Okay.
already,
Oh,
so
see,
we
I'm-
should do this hula
Okay.
demonstration
Yeah.
thing.
Let's dance.
Okay,
Keep talking too much.
who's talking? This song is called Hi'ilave. It's a traditional song. It describes the waterfall Hi'ilave, which is at the head of the valley called Waipio on the north end of the Big Island, and it's a spectacularly beautiful waterfall and very romantic. And so this song, it talks about the waterfall, but Hawaiian songs have what's called kaona. It means a double meaning, so it's actually describing a romance at the waterfall.
Ready?
Kamaka kai kana ya Hi'ilave, ka papalohi mai a Ukulele. Kamaka kai kana ya Hi'ilave, ka papalohi mai a Ukulele. Pakele mai au I kanui manu, auele aino kuni Waipio. Pakele mai au I kanui manu, auele aino kuni Waipio. No puna ke alai alia mai, no mika vailele a o Hi'ilave. No puna ke alai alia mai, no mika vailele a o Hi'ilave. Aina ia mai ana kapuana, Kamaka kai kena ia Hi'ilave. Aina ia mai ana kapuana, Kamaka kai kena ia Hi'ilave. Hi'ilave, Hi'ilave.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Working in a small space.
Tell us what you were doing with this.
Yes. This is an
about
ipu. It's a dance implement. There are lots of implements like this that are used with hula because the original hula had no what we consider music, just percussion. And so there were lots of implements like this that made percussive type sounds. There's split bamboo and gourds that rattle, and then these types of things. Ipu, it means gourd. So a lot of hula can be danced with just hands, but then you can use implements too. And this is actually a very nice one done by the artist Kina Kam in Hawaii. She's carved, these are taro plants.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you pound the roots of this to make poi. Not this gourd, the taro plant.
We should tell folks one more time how to get in touch with you through your website.
Right. Our website again is www.ukulele.org. That's UKULELE.org. And magically, again, it's on a television screen.
And folks can get information about the expo. They can also find out about, I guess, becoming a member and subscribing to your newsletter that way.
That's correct. Yeah. we, you know, we have an annual membership that includes our quarterly newsletter, and all the information is there on our website about how to join up if anybody's interested.
And they'll find out all kinds of interesting information on that website.
There is lots of information. Tom has built the website. It's wonderful.
Okay, we have about, what, 2 minutes left for our 12th Street Rag.
Okay, wonderful.
We have to exchange instruments. Huh?
Take it away. Oh, thank you for being our guest on Horses Sing Money.
Thank you very much for having
Very
us.
entertaining to hear all about your museum.
It was wonderful to be here, so thanks. Okay.